Now, the question arises, on what basis are we asserting that liberty is an unalienable right? And it is being derived from the Jeffersonian postulates in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That's what your geometry teacher would call a postulate. When they hold these to be self-evident, these are the postulates on which the dude on the deuce was working in deducing that the United States of America ought to become independent. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, so life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights. Liberty, as we've already said, is the freedom to do whatever does not violate anybody's rights. Now, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Well, that is the legitimate function of a government, is to secure rights. To secure the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what governments are for. Not to trample your rights, not to force you into government-run indoctrination centers so you can learn all about how lucky you are to live in a free country, not to deploy gun-toting goons in bulletproof vests to intimidate you into living a healthy, drug-free lifestyle. To secure these rights, governments are instituted. Now, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed is, on the larger sense, and only their just powers. Remember, the government may justly prohibit you from throwing a baby into a river, even though you did not consent to that law, and neither did the baby. The baby cannot consent to it, and if you don't consent to it, liberty is the freedom to do whatever does not violate anybody's rights, and the government is there to secure the baby's right to life. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. Now, we've already got a perfectly good form of government. What has to be done is to make that government produce liberty. The government has become destructive of that end, and the right of the people doesn't require the majority. It's the right of any individual, the right of the people peaceably to assemble, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. These rights inhere in the individual, as does the right to liberty. So you don't have to be the majority in order to exercise that right. The goal of Operation USA Freedom will be to make the United States of America a free country with liberty and justice for all. There's no need to destroy the existing government. There's only a need to produce liberty and justice for all, to cause that government to repeal all the unjust laws and to discontinue violating these unalienable rights. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. In this they're saying, well, it's not a good idea to destroy a government that's been around for so long over some little thing. Every little thing doesn't justify destroying the government. It's not prudent to do so. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. A long train of abuses and usurpations. The drinking age is just one abuse, just one usurpation of power by the enemies of liberty. There's a lot of them, and we've got to join forces with the victims of the other usurpations and abuses in order to make the United States of America a free country, in order to cause the government to back off and stop violating the rights of the people. It will be argued that the Declaration of Independence is not a legal document, but unalienable rights cannot be derived from legal documents anyway. Neither can they be modified or preempted by legal documents. The 18th Article of Amendment to the United States Constitution imposed alcohol prohibition on everybody, and they had no authority to enforce that on somebody who did not participate in ratifying the 18th Amendment. Unalienable rights, by definition, preempt the rule of law. You will also note that the postulate is that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Well, that's a religious opinion, and governments must refrain from enforcing religious opinions. It is, however, irrelevant whether you get these rights from God or from a godless nature, whether they are God-given rights or natural rights. Either way, they are rights. Just the same as it's irrelevant whether God makes the tide come in at Hampton Beach or whether a godless nature causes the tide to rise at Hampton Beach. Either way, we know that it rises. Who's going to decide what rights are unalienable? And the answer is, it's like asking who's going to decide when the tide will be high at Hampton Beach. Maybe God decided it, maybe a godless nature caused it, but nobody is in charge of the high tide charts. It's either accurate or it's not. You can observe, you can compute, but nobody causes the tide to come in. It cannot be altered by an act of will, and neither can the unalienable rights of a person be altered by an act of will.